How are lads? All right.
Yeah, good afternoon. We've just been talking to George Givington, who said that the mullering his scrum got against Bath was probably due to the fact that about 25 of his props are currently injured. It's something obviously they targeted. For you, it's got to be an obvious point, isn't it, of weakness?
It was at the weekend. Excuse me. Hello, Will. It was at the weekend. You know that I think ours was pretty dominant as well. Such an important, crucial part of the game, isn't it? For territory, for momentum swings within the game. We in the past have struggled in a 4G. Newcastle, Cardiff. Our scrum was good, struggling in a 4G. So we went and hired a 4G pitch today to get used to the surface, and it is different. You have to scrummage differently. So hopefully we'll get it right. I'm looking at how it was refereed last weekend, and honestly, that hasn't been consistent with the messages we've been getting week in, week out, which is stability before the feed. So I'm sure it'll be a different prospect this weekend. I'm sure I'm going to speak to Luke Pearce later about our game, and if he was happy with that, I'll speak to Foley later in the week about what he's expecting from us. But I don't think we'll be allowed, if we do get dominance, to be able to go through the mark as what happened at the weekend. Does that put it on display? It's complicated. Yes, we're looking for dominance. The pitch has an influence, and I think it's going to be refereed differently. So if we can manage all of those things, then we'll be doing all right.
Do you not have a 4G at Carrington?
We do, yeah, we do. 3G. And there is a difference, like with the phone networks, there is a difference. Like the traction you get on a new 4G is different to a flattened, hardened, older 3G. So you have to get best like for like. And with the scrum, you don't have to be off by a lot, Chris, as you know, to get absolutely dominated. And an inch or two on an engagement ends up 50 meters by way of a penalty. So every little bit of detail in and around your foot placement on the bind, your body position, post the set, it is slightly different on a 4G with the traction you're able to generate. It sounds complicated, doesn't it? But thank God it is, otherwise there'd be no room for a scrum coach.
Just moving outside your scrum, obviously George had a big influence down at Bristol, but Manu lasted the whole game largely, didn't he? Is that because he's free of worries about signing his new contract?
I think we seem to be. I tell you what it is. Like, he's lasted the last few 80s for us. He had 2 months, didn't he, with England of forced training, not playing through his ban. And he reckons that the increased intensity he had, sustained intensity of training, without the yo-yo effect of like maxing himself out at the weekend and having to recover on Monday, Tuesday, the fact that he was able to go all week and not play at the weekend has made him more robust. He feels fitter. He looked fitter. He got more touches on the ball. He come off and he said, "No, I feel good," and he does. And he thinks it's because of the 2 months he spent with England. So what was, a really horrible time for him, challenging time, because he's not playing for England, he's just training. The silver lining is that he is now in the best shape he's been for a long time at the business end of the season. And
you may have noticed I mentioned something about a contract then?
I don't know if he's signed it or not. I'm just assuming he has. Again, like, if it's not official,
it'd be quite good if you could actually do a yes this time, because Kieran is probably fed up like me of bothering you with this. I'm sure Daniel will come in straight away and tell me you're still going to sign, aren't you?
What would we talk about if it wasn't the saga that is Manu's contract?
Yeah, he must have bloody signed by now.
Yeah, I think he probably has. I think he has in spirit, Kieran. I don't know. Honestly, like, as soon as things,
you're DOR.
I know, but as soon as things have been verbally agreed, and I'm hugging him, I'm giving him handshakes, you're seeing how he's playing. For me, that's as good as, like, he said he wants to stay. We've agreed on terms. He had the contract, I think, delivered to him on Monday, and I haven't followed it up. I just haven't, like he come in and trained, really played well, really well. If something was wrong, I'd know about it. Nothing's wrong.
You warned us last week about these circling French piranhas and Japanese sharks.
Yeah, that is out of my control, that, Chris, isn't it? Like, all I can do is, like, how is he when he rocks up in the morning? Look, and there lies the other thing, Chris. Like, for you to think that I'm going to hold him to ransom on a contract, which is not the market value by way of what French and Japanese clubs, you don't know me well enough after all the times we spent sat together talking. Like, if they come in with a ridiculous amount of money, he'll be going somewhere else. But and I say ridiculous, it has to be ridiculous, because and all the other offers that he's been proposed with, he'd rather stay for us. But that thing outside my control is just that. Like, I've just got to let that go, haven't I?
I think I know what you said, but I'll let somebody else jump in and make it more sense. Thank you.
What do you want to know? I don't know if he signed. Like,
well, could you hold up a contract with his name at the bottom of it or something like that, just to bring this to an end?
Yeah, I am not in control of when this publicly gets released, and I don't know officially if he signed the contract that sat on his table. He's not diversive enough. Manu isn't. Ask him. Ring him up. He's not sneaky enough to come in on a day and not be smiles and cuddles and high-fiving, and then be going somewhere else at the end of the week. As I know right now, from what I know right now in this second, he's staying with us next year. How's that?
Great. Thank you very much.
Al, could I just ask, as a follow-up question, how do you sort of view the return on investment on Manu? I mean, I'm not asking what you're paying him, but I imagine you must be planning that he won't be available for a large part of next season. And if you're going on his previous record, you obviously have to factor injuries in. So how as a DOR do you try and assess the sort of value for money he provides if he's only available for a limited number of games?
Well, I don't do it alone, thankfully, Dan. We've got a recruitment syndicate, I guess. That sounds posh, doesn't it? A recruitment team who on a weekly, bi-monthly basis look at the succession plan in the squad, the strength and depth we have in each area, versus salary cap, and robustness is taken into account there. So it's quite meticulously planned through. Is what do we need for the best benefit of the squad from a playing perspective? That's just one aspect, I might add. And as I said all along, Kieran, that we needed a senior centre with some robustness, and that was our priority, which we've got. Sam Bedlow, and then as things have transpired and will transpire over the next couple of weeks in terms of some big stories that are coming out, money has been made available for which we can procure the services. Not that, the commitment of Manu, because the other thing that he gives you commercially is he's a big name, and it's a big message, for what we're building, what we've continued to build here. And but one of the biggest factors, obviously, he's a great player, but it's what he does to people around him, socially, performance-wise. He's a super carrier. He is the squad father. He makes the 5 or 6 people in and around him better players for how he interacts with them, how he gives them confidence, his quiet composure, all these things. And that is an intangible, but it's worth its weight in cap as well.
So I guess I'm speaking more generally, not just Manu. I was wondering if you, as a DOR, think producing lots of England players is actually worth what you get back in terms of credits and the fact that they're going to be missing for half the season.
You have to factor that in to your whole squad, your squad as a whole. how many international you have who will be away at those periods and what your squad looks like then, hence the succession planning in depth. I think that's, that to some degree, because that's not been, there's been no change there with Manu, has there? Regards to his international status. That's for people you're looking to recruit in or you're looking to retain. I might add that I've got one hat here, which is the players' development, and another hat, which is what's best for Sale kind of moving forward. The first hat, which I can't ignore, it's my number one priority, is to make sure we get the best out of these individuals, people and players, and that's for them. It's to play at the highest level. It's to play at England, like I'm pushing them there. And then down the line, if we can't afford them, like is what has happened at other clubs, and it's right for them to move on for financial reasons, they will. But there'll still always be a place for them here within the structure of our cap, provided we've got enough players in each position. But I'd rather have that scenario, like we pushed them there, got them there, they play for England, and then, because it's a finite career, they choose to move on for money, then it's their choice, isn't it? As opposed to the other way around, saying like, we don't want you because we've got too many internationals. That's never been the case. And I don't think it will be. My purpose has to be aligned with their purpose, and that's for them to play right at the top level, Dan. Right at the top level, best of their performance, and that's international. So I can't, what you're asking me to, what you're asking me is like, how do you negate your own principles? That's what I feel you're asking me. Like, how do you go against the things that you define as being a good coach? I can't separate those. It's player first, and then I'll let the money men figure out the rest of it, and their agents don't go into that part of it.
Okay. Good answer. Thank you very much.
Afternoon, Alex. How are you?
Good, thanks. Kieran, are you going to the Supporters Association dinner tonight?
I will not be, unfortunately.
You'll be missing out. You'll be missing out, no doubt. It's going to be raucous. We've got about 15 lads going down.
Good. You mentioned last week that Dan Dupree was putting off surgery until the end of the season. With a semi-final now guaranteed, does that affect the way that you bring him back in, knowing that semi-final is now affirmative, is now confirmed? Is the plan now to give him more time to be fully fit for that, or what's the plan with him exactly? Yeah,
look, I was, because he's had his haircut, he's had a shave, he's moving around and he's doing a bit of training. He looks really fresh, so I was like, oh, he should be right for Gloucester. He won't be right for Gloucester. There was every chance to be right for Newcastle, and the semis, there's only a week to separate them two. Ideally, Newcastle, more game time and more opportunity, because if the lads are playing who are playing well against Newcastle, then it's very difficult to kind of bring someone in at that stage. And even the calibre of Danny, he knows that, but he wants to give himself a chance at least. So it'll be in 2 weeks' time or the week after.
Tom Ellis has arrived in the last couple of weeks. I assume that's in some part due to Kobus's injury. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the reasons for bringing him in, and also the fact that it's obviously a deal not just through to the end of this season, but a deal through to the end of next season? We are very happy with those guys that we have in the wings in Ben Bamber and Alex Groves. We think they're going to be good quality Premiership, if not international players, as they have been through the junior age groups. They aren't at that level right now. I thought maybe they could get there, in some of the Prem Cup fixtures that we played towards the knockout stages showed us where we're at, I think, in terms of maturation of high quality physical back five players. And again, with other moving factors, which will become obvious in the next couple of weeks, there was a need to strengthen that area through a bit of edge, bit of bulk, hard working, hard grafting, honest players. Presumably, though, if he plays well, which you would hope he would, there's the potential of him earning a longer contract beyond the end of next year. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. This is 1 year is always quite speculative. We don't really want to sign people up for a year.
rarely, unless it's to kind of help the maturation of other players come through. And I have mentioned those two other players, but at that time, we'll have to assess how some of our more senior back rowers are getting on, you know, like see how Bo's getting on as well at that point in this time. We're still in contract negotiations with him. I've just had a long conversation with him now, and I think we're in a good place from a perspective. The rest is figures.
I think you mentioned during the release about how Saracens, I think, were pretty keen, and especially with their injuries in the back row in particular, they must be devastated that they didn't manage to secure him and that we have.
Yeah, I was sat next to Mark McCall and he mentioned that a DOR meeting last Thursday. And that was the other, like I'm looking at the strength and depth that Saracens have in the second row department. And, you know, as Equi told you, Tizard, McFarlane, for all intents and purposes, for kind of international top quality. You need that strength and depth. We're getting there, I think, with the squad we're amassing.
In terms of the injury dispensation, you explained it really well when I asked about it earlier in the season. How does it work in terms of when an injury straddles across 2 seasons? Because obviously with Kobus's injury, it will go into next season. So does that open up more money into next season because it will move into next season? How exactly does that work? Yeah,
from my understanding, it does, yeah. You get them for both. It's a minimum 12 weeks with someone, the 7 to 9 month injury. It spans across both seasons. You get them for both. You get injury dispensation for both. That's my understanding of it.
A couple of weeks back, it was announced that Ewan Ashman is going to Edinburgh. I know that we spoke, I think, a week before it was announced, and you weren't sure. Can you give us a bit of an outline of the timeline of events? I know you've mentioned that the SRU have been after him for a few years now, so it isn't just something that's just happened. But in terms of when you became aware of this, in terms of it being a legitimate thing for next season, and the timeline of how we came to this point of him going?
So he's always had a decent relationship with them. They wanted him to go when he went on loan 2 years ago. We had Curtis Langdon here, and he was just a young lad then, and it was important to get him some game time. So that fitted quite well because he was kind of on their radar internationally. You know, he comes back and they're offering him contracts, and I'm saying, no, you're the future here. And, you know, look at Bev and look at James Harper, and all these young lads going to be playing with. And, you know, he was fully into that at the time. At least he's telling me he was into it at the time. And then every time he goes home, I say goes home, I went back to Scotland to play for them in the Autumn Internationals or the Six Nations. There's opportunity there where, I guess, opportunity for Scotland where they're able to turn his head and drip. I would, you know, one person would say gold, someone else would say poison in his ear. There's always that teething when you come back with a player who comes from one environment back to another, and at some point maybe we just didn't pull him back in close enough. He assures me it's not for what we've done here, what we're building. I believe him to some degree, but there's some part of me that feels that we should have done more. You know, he's going back. His girlfriend lives there. His uncle lives there. I've said all this. His dad's from there. He wants to play for Scotland. He wants to play for the Lions, and he believes it's his best route to do that. Look at that. Home is where the heart is, isn't it? I know that. That's why I'm here. So, without getting too emotional, I found out probably around Christmas time, and you know, he's not getting the game time that he wanted, and I'm like, well, Aka van der Merwe's playing really well, and he agrees. Like Aka's on his, as we all know it, when he's playing and he's fit, is as good as any hooker in the world. And he thought that. He's like, why is he not playing for South Africa? It doesn't help my cause, Al. Because as long as he's here and he's playing fit, I can see myself being second fiddle, and that kind of bleeds back into his want and desire to play for Scotland. So You're getting the bones of it, aren't you? I basically pretty much offered him, like, look, if you're playing well and there's elements of your game you need to get better in, and the set piece was one of them. Like, Aka's better at scrummaging, and his darts have been better than Ewan's when he came back from camp. I said, you get those up there, then it's equal rotation. In which he got it. He got equal rotation. He played those European Cup games. He's playing well post-Christmas. And quite clearly, even on the back of all that, it wasn't enough. He'd kind of already made his decision. And he still felt like it was a better place for him to attain international honours, more international honours. He's had mates there who he's played with through the 20s, and he'd have a closer connection and more frequent dialogue with those international coaches that he'd be working with in the future. So I understand his reasons. I don't know, like, I'm gutted. I'm gutted because feel like he's one of our own, and we brought him through. So yeah, I'm a little bit bitter, and I hope to think that he hasn't been coerced with misinformation that's where he should be. I don't believe it is, but that's where he's going.
Considering he had 2 years left on his contract, do you think contracts mean as much as they perhaps once did?
Depends who you're asking, I guess. Like, if I were to put my name to something, my intent is to honour it, always to honour it. Because it's a commitment, isn't it? It's your word on paper, basically. Having said that, I still had a year left at Saracens, and because the reasons were right for me to come here, I went with good tidings and a blessing, really. As did Faf, going to Japan, as did Lewitt, going back to his dad in South Africa, as did Chris Ashton when he went to Toulon. So I think there's always been exceptions to the contractual rule. And because this game, especially the game it's really special, isn't it? Like, it's not like you order a Big Mac, you get a Big Mac. It's not just a monetary transaction. There is heart in this. You have to have your heart behind it, because you're going to get hurt every week. So, long and the short of it, contracts do matter. But I think the contracts have to be, I guess, a written form of all the right reasons. And I think for someone to play at the best, they have to have all the reasons should be right. You know what I mean? For that, like, it has to be. It can't just be, we pay you this, you turn up. Holistically, it's got to be right, as I've harped on about for ages. And if it isn't, then you have to look at the contract and renegotiate it. You have to, because people can't just play for the pound coin or the euro. I don't believe that.
Just one final one. Are there any plans to bring in a replacement for him, or to promote the likes of Ethan Kane and Harry Thompson from within?
Both. We are hot on the recruitment path, looking what's out there. With two pretty senior hookers in Tommy Taylor and Aka, who are really good, but they are quite senior. We have faith in Ethan and Harry, but there's a big gap there, isn't there, between the 30-year-olds and the 23-year-old, and the experience gap as well. So there is an opportunity somewhere in the middle for us to find someone to support those two senior lads and to bring Ethan and Harry through.
Thank you.
Hi, Alex. Just very quickly from me, you mentioned Manu really sort of hitting his straps at the start of this press conference. I mean, clearly that must be a massive boost for you, obviously going into the business end of the season now, to have like one of your best players getting back to somewhere near his best, I'd suggest. Yeah, him, George, Tom Taylor, Aka van der Merwe, Nick Schoonert was good,
up front against a British Lion, Lou said, you know, let us not dismiss Gus Waugh. You know what I mean? He was keeping an extremely talented scrum half on the bench at the moment through his consistency of performance. Tom Roebuck fielded 2 or 3 in the air. It's so crucial, Al, to get your best players playing the best rugby at this point in the season, and that they're cohesive with it. You know what I mean? And look, it's one game. I'm not saying we made it. We have not. There's still a higher ceiling for this group, but really encouraging at this point that we're doing something right in training, certainly to get them in the right spot by the weekend.
And just lastly from me, I mean, you know, we're getting down to the business end of things now. I mean, can you just give us an insight into how sort of excited you are by that? Obviously, Sale have been sort of maybe not part of this in previous seasons. What's sort of the atmosphere around the camp at the minute?
Yeah, was it like I'm trying to, like 2 years ago, I was definitely too emotional getting into this point in the season. And I did mention it probably come a bit too quick, a bit too early, and I was like, "Oh, how good's this?" And this is how it's supposed to be, and it's not. It's really fucking hard to get here. So it's without we know it's there, but we want to do justice to the amount of effort we've put in for the last 9 months, really, of this season. Really. Not take it for granted. Understand how we get better and continue to get better. We've had some honest conversations and probably some of our most intense sessions in the last couple of weeks, and kind of showed a little bit on Friday. But yeah, this is not a means, as you could have told by Tom Curry's comments post the game, to preserve what we've done. We're not here. We don't want to just compete. Like, we've got a job to do, and there's a few games, only 4 games to do it. That's what we're looking at. You know, brilliant. We got here. No, like, no one remembers a semi-finalist. No one remembers it. So you're kind of almost nearly there type stuff. Burnt by that 2 years ago. So yeah, very much more of a steely determination than a enthusiastic, energetic festival summer's here type. Does that describe how we are? I think it does. Yeah, we're on it.
Good job. I'll let Will jump in. Cheers.
Cheers, Al.
Hey Alex, Will here. How's it going?
Yeah, good, mate. You well?
Yeah, all good, all good. I had one question about the Curries after their men of the match performance on Friday. Have you put them on different programs or something? It just seems that Tom has come back looking big and angry and strong and physically different to Ben. I don't know whether you're trying to do something different with the two of them. Obviously, they're genetically identical, aren't they? But they actually are starting to look different now, aren't they?
Yeah, no. Yes and no. That's a shit answer. They have their individualized programs, I think, but Ben is an inch shorter and 4Ks lighter and has been. Ben has been away with England, as you know. Difficult in that kind of an intense environment to keep weight on, although it is a target for him. Whereas Tom's been injured and been in the gym. No one trains harder than Tom in the gym, barring Ben or maybe Ross Harrison. So what you're probably seeing is just where they've been in terms of their physiological